This is the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast, where we unpack fantasy, faith, and life. I'm Bryce Johnson with Pastor Trip Smith, and we are your fantasy coaches here to encourage you and help you win while you play fantasy football with purpose. As we provide fantasy advice, we won't always be right, but we hope we'll be convincing. We are coming to you live from the Unpacking It Ministry studio just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, in the beautiful downtown Mount Holly. It is a wonderful day today. Apparently, I've been in the studio today, but it's a nice day when you look out the window, and I hope that you are having a great day. I hope you are coming off a great fantasy weekend. I got to say, it was one of my better fantasy weekends. It was a fun one. It was an exciting one. Some of the guys I've been waiting to break out. Kyle Manungai, my guy, here we go. So we saw some good things, but also some concerns, some injuries still lingering, some underperforming players, some NFL teams that are going south quickly. How does that affect our fantasy teams? And then today, as we are live right now, we are moments away from the NFL trade deadline ending. A couple of trades have already happened, which has provided some fantasy shenanigans that we will get into. Will there be another trade in the next few minutes? We will react and respond accordingly. But glad to have you here today. Encourage you to check out fantasyfootballfellowship.com. It's never too late to sign up for a free membership and access the weekly breakout content. And we hope that leagues will finish the season strong. Keep meeting all the way up till just a little before Christmas, a couple weeks before Christmas. We'll have content for you. We'll continue to do this podcast. We were actually just talking about our Christmas podcast, the much anticipated Christmas podcast, which we'll hopefully do again this year as well. But league meetings continuing to take place. Heard from a league leader the other day. He's getting his league together to go watch, I think, Thursday Night Football coming up. So how does that look for you and your league? Are you guys watching games together? I had someone from my league over on Sunday. Had a wonderful day watching what really was a great 1 o'clock window. Last week, like a week ago, not so great. This week made up for it because it was fantastic. Lots of good games, good matchups, and plenty of fantasy scoring. All right, so let's say hello to Trip, and then we'll get into some fantasy shenanigans. Trip, how you doing, man?
I'm great, man. Yeah, great weekend. I mean, it was a good weekend of football. Hey, I don't know. We don't talk about baseball on this show, so this is all I'll say about it. But it was a great Game 7 of the World Series, and so I just kind of stacked some great sporting events this weekend. And you're right, there were some fun games, some fun performances, some guys that I haven't bought in on who exploded, and so it's always fun when your guys go off, and that was one of those weekends for me. So I'm having a pretty good, knock on wood, I'm having a pretty good fantasy season this year after kind of a down year last year for me. So. It feels good.
Feels good. I was looking at the standings today. You are ahead of me in the best ball league, in the sleeper league.
That's good to hear because some of those unpacking it leagues I have not presented myself well in some of the other ones, but at least at that best ball league, I think my team is okay. I don't think we're going to win it, but I think maybe we'll sneak into the playoffs. I don't have any running backs on that team. My running backs stink on that team, so
gotta have running backs.
Not enough to win, but I'm going to sneak into the playoffs and maybe something crazy will happen. So good, yeah, good football weekend for me.
Absolutely. All right, let's begin with the best fantasy game of the week. So the game that provided us the most fantasy points. And so let's begin with our segment that we call Fantasy Shenanigans, and here we go.
Fantasy Shenanigans.
All right, so the Cincinnati Bengals have been a fascinating team this year as they've just decided, all right, we have no defense. We're not going to fire our defense coordinator. It does not matter. But when you are an NFL team that gets to play against the Bengals, and then you have fantasy players representing that team, you are in great shape. And so Chicago Bears, a lot of those players we've been waiting on. We wanted the big performance and especially with the rookies, waiting on Kyle Manungai and Loveland and Colston Loveland. And so this was the moment for them. And even Caleb Williams having just a marquee game, the Bengals provided you that. And then on the flip side, the Bengals offense since Joe Flacco showed up, they look a lot better. They're putting up big points. This was T. Higgins week. Chase Brown continues to emerge, which is very exciting. He's a little bit in the doghouse. His coach didn't like his comments after the game as he blamed the defense, but it makes sense. Come on. What are we doing here?
we can all see it. Let's just see it.
Now I was thinking to myself last night, though, I go, okay, this was a major game, lots of fantasy performances, but it was almost like there's like a tax on it. So there's like a 20% bump or more. So we have to like brace ourselves and go, okay, what do we actually take away from this game and these performances? What was kind of the takeaway for you?
The takeaway is that as long as Joe Flacco is healthy, he's going to run a competent offense. And when you have those skill players, that's going to result in big fantasy performances, right? So you can just, whereas when Jake Browning was starting, you couldn't even start Jamar Chase with confidence. And now you can start Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown has new life because of Flacco. Even like Andre Yosevich had like 15 fantasy points, so you can even throw him in there if you're kind of desperate at wide receiver or need somebody in a flex. It's just good news. Now, that said, Flacco had the shoulder issue last week. He's an older guy. At any moment, it could all come crashing down. That's the reality with the Cincinnati Bengals. And that has probably always been true for the Cincinnati Bengals. But their defense is so bad. I've heard some people say it's one of the worst NFL defenses, maybe of all time.
Oh, yeah. And then they just traded their linebacker.
Right. And they're giving people away. I guess they didn't trade Hendrickson today. But it's just like their defense is terrible. And that's good news as long as Joe Flacco is their quarterback.
So on the Bears side, I've been all in on Kyle Monangai. Couple leagues, I've got him. I've been stashing him, waiting, and then we saw it. He looked great. Now, is he going to put up 190 some yards every week? Unlikely, but he has proven that he is legit, and he can be either at worst a complement to DeAndre Swift. But if Swift is out for any extended time, we'll see how long this groin issue keeps him out. But Monangai can be in your starting lineups as a fantasy manager, and that is good news. So I hope that you have listened to that fantasy advice over the last few weeks, or really even back in the summer. I drafted Monangai in July, so I've been waiting that long to see him emerge, and it took till week 9. But we'll take it. We will take it because that was a monster game.
I mean, he's a rookie, so maybe it was one of those things he's got to put the time in. He looked like a really dynamic running back. He looked better, I think, than DeAndre Swift, and so I think.
I don't know if I want to go that.
Swift is good.
So Swift has been
good. And Swift
has
looked quick this year. Swift has a history of injury problems. I think I'm worried that what this becomes is like a committee for a while, and that maybe Swift has another little tweak injury, and then Monangai just takes his place as the starter later in the season. So
yeah, he could be a guy down the stretch. So I'm excited about that. And then Colson Loveland he's a top 10 pick. So you want him. He's a good player in the NFL draft, right? Yeah. He was 10th. I think Chicago took him 10th.
Before Tyler Warren, never forget.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean,
but we saw what he's capable of.
Yeah.
And he's just more talented than my other favorite tight end, who I can't think of his name now. I've already forgotten his name. I've already moved on. Cole Kmet, who's been there forever. I used to love Cole Kmet, but now we moved.
Bear. I thought you were going to say Aronde Gadsden or Fannin or something like that.
You're
talking about the other Bear. Yeah. Right.
Watching him walk off the field, it's like, all right, sorry, bye, Kmet.
Did he go out injured? Did he leave this game? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is he?
So that's why Loveland was getting more action. Right. So he was the only guy last week and just kind of had a decent game, but the Bears' overall offense wasn't great. This week, much better. So excitement there. Let's go back to Monday Night Football. I have been someone out on the Cardinals. I don't want any Cardinals players on my roster. However, Trey McBride continues to be, if not the best, one of the best tight ends right there. We'll talk about Brock Bowers. McBride plays well. Marvin Harrison finally delivers a good game. Jacoby Brissett is the quarterback for the Cardinals in this one, and the offense looks much better. Last week, I was very clear. I don't want Bam Knight on my team. And
yeah, that one got me. I did want him on my team.
You wanted him, but we all gave up on Amari DeMarcado, and he's now back in the mix. So this is a messy, annoying backfield. That's why I was kind of out on it. We're still waiting for Trey Benson to come back. But then on the flip side, Dallas, not a great night. A couple guys did okay. For the tight end. I don't know why I can't think of names today.
Jake Ferguson.
Jake Ferguson.
Yeah.
I was going to call it Terrace Ferguson. That's the guy with the Rams.
That's right. Yeah.
Who also had a nice game.
Right.
So the Ferguson brothers, nice game. I don't think they're brothers, but they both had a nice game. What was your takeaway from the Dallas side of things?
I just think the Cardinals defense is pretty good, So it was disappointing to see Dak, CB, those guys have a little bit of a down week. But I actually think the Cardinals defense is solid, especially these prime time end of the week Monday night games. It's just kind of, you never quite know what's going to happen. So I'm not worried about my Cowboys long term, but it was a tough down week. The Cardinals are better with Brissett at quarterback. I'm ready to say that definitively.
There we go.
And that's bad news for Kyler Murray, like stockholder, especially if you're in like a keeper league or a dynasty league where the story has always been maybe he'll mature, maybe he'll just become a more kind of steady player and just grow up, and it's just not happening. And I think that the Cardinals are frustrated with that. The other team, like Marvin Harrison Jr. looks happy that Brissett is the quarterback and not Kyler Murray, So I still think, Harrison finished with 7 receptions for 96 yards. He had 6 receptions for 80 yards at the end of the first half and already had his TD. I feel like all season long, he hasn't put a full 4 quarters together. It seems like he has a good half and then he starts slow. So I'd love to see him I really think that he has the skill to be an elite receiver. It just doesn't seem to have like the attitude of just like, I just want to go out there and like snatch people's souls. Although he did put Bland on his rear end. I don't know if you saw that play where he just broke his ankles.
Did you see
that? And CeeDee Lamb was, on the sideline. So
he was shocked by it or impressed by it.
It's good news, I think. And the coaches came out today and said that Murray is still the starter when he's healthy. But I think if he just comes out and has another game where he's just a goofball, and it's just like, bro, you can't put it together. You're not a mature NFL quarterback.
It's just a roller coaster ride. And so in the NFL, you just don't want that. You just want consistency.
Right. Yeah.
Brissett isn't great, but if he's got enough talent around him, he can be okay. We've seen that over the years.
And he's been pretty great for the 4, was it 3 or 4 games that he started now?
He looked okay.
Yeah, he's been pretty good. So, bad news for Kyler Murray owners, I think. I just think it's maybe the beginning of the end for him. But
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Last thing under the shenanigans conversation, the trade deadline. So we're still waiting, a couple minutes left if anything else pops. Nothing too crazy today, but 3 wide receivers are on the move. And I'd say none of these guys have lived up to expectations this season. And so will their new spot allow them to maybe emerge in a new way? So Jacoby Myers goes from the Raiders to Jacksonville. Rashid Shaheed goes from the Saints to the Jets. And then Adonai Mitchell goes from the Colts to the Jets. No, I'm sorry. Shaheed went to the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Mitchell went to the Jets. There you go. Sorry about that. Mitchell went to the Jets. Shaheed to the Seahawks. So I have been a Jacoby Myers guy over the years. He's been great for me. He has overachieved. This year has been a disappointment, but I was worried about him as soon as you mentioned the trade demand. So as soon as that happened, I was like, I'm out on Jacoby. I did have him in a keeper league, but it's like, I can't load up on Jacoby Myers this year. But now going to Jacksonville, this is interesting. I think sort of a renewed energy down there. There is a spot for him.
Yeah.
We'll see the health with Brian Thomas Jr., but Travis Hunter is going to be out at least another couple weeks. So there's an immediate need for him to play. The whole wide receiving core is banged up. And Myers is talented. So if Trevor Lawrence could ever be consistent, another guy, he's in that Kyler Murray category. Just of consistency. So I do like that. And then I think Adonai Mitchell is worth a flyer just because the Jets have no receivers outside of Garrett Wilson. And Mitchell was a fairly decently high drafted player out of Texas, just never really fit with the Colts. And then, of course, he did the dumb play early in the year, dropping the ball before the end zone. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, boost in value, I think, for all 3 of these guys. I mean, we saw Ty Johnson, when Garrett Wilson was hurt. And literally, they have no receivers. I'm talking about the newer Tyler Johnson, who is the Jets receiver.
Yes, Tyler
who went
Johnson
off against the Bengals a couple weeks ago. Right, that just shows you the lack of depth there. So it's good news for Adonai Mitchell, who is just buried on the Colts depth chart. He's a guy that maybe you go out and make a low ball offer. I think when trades like this happen, the people who own these players, maybe he's a waiver ad. You're right. You're probably right. So usually when these sort of trades happen, if they're already owned, the guys are excited that they happen. I think of the 3, it's the biggest boost for Rashid Shaheed, who I believe is a good NFL wide receiver. The question that I wonder is, if you saw Torrey Horton's 2 touchdown performance on Sunday night for the Seahawks, is the Rashid Shaheed trade? It's definitely a sign that the Seahawks think that they're a Super Bowl contender, which I think is true. I think that they're a really, really good team who has a chance to make a deep push in the real NFL playoffs this year. And so this is a move you make when you think that you're that kind of team. For me, the question is he replacing Horton in that speedster, long route kind of role, or is this just mean Cooper Kupp is done for? I mean, I think Cooper Kupp as a fantasy relevant receiver, this is the last that we hear of him.
It's sad. Him and Austin Eckler the same year. It's tough.
It's tough. Two fantasy darlings.
Those are top of my list.
But I think that it's probably bad news for Torrey Horton too. So the owners that were excited about Horton this week with that 2 touchdown performance, I think that this hurts a little bit. And I think that this could be really good news for Rashid Shaheed, who I think is a true deep ball savant in the NFL. He's one of the fastest players in the NFL. He can break a huge play anytime, and Darnold can throw that ball. So I think it's good news for the Seahawks as a real NFL team, and I think that Rashid Shaheed is a guy that I might actually try to go acquire because I think even what the expectation will be for him, I think that he could be better.
I don't necessarily disagree with your take. My personal philosophy on wide receivers is I shy away from the boomer bust guys depending on them, maybe at a second flex spot, I'm willing to do that. But in general, I want guys that are going to catch passes, lots of passes. I want volume. Those are the guys that I particularly like at receiver. And so Shaheed normally isn't that guy. He's a boomer bust, couple catches. But if he's on, it's 80 yards and a touchdown and a couple catches. So
what he was doing 2 seasons ago before he got hurt, he looked like he was emerging as a really a good and semi-consistent in NFL wide receiver. And then the quarterback play has just been not great in New Orleans. So it's a huge upgrade for him at quarterback for sure.
There's some intrigue there. Yeah, no question about it. All right, so there you go. There's this week's fantasy shenanigans. I will mention this. So I had a matchup this week against CJ Stroud. And so you feel bad when you're going up against a guy whose quarterback goes out early. Stroud went out early. So that was a nice relaxing Sunday for me, knowing that my opponent was getting no production from his quarterback. And then Davis Mills came in and still did fine for my guy, Nico Collins. So definitely some shenanigans there. We also, Geno Smith, QB6 this week. That was pretty wild. Had my buddy Travis from Upward. He was on the Unpacking It podcast this week. He started Geno this week.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he was happy about that. And then how about Jonathan Taylor going back to earth, down to earth, 7.7 points this week. So kind of a weird shenanigans for the Colts losing to the Steelers, which I have to say wasn't overly surprising. It was just sort of one of those games in the schedule that kind of leaned toward the Steelers on that one. But always weird to see Jonathan Taylor have an off game considering what he's done so far this season. So there you go. All right, let's jump to our next segment where we admit where we're wrong and do some accountability and confession.
Pardon me, Mr. Perfect. I guess I forgot that you never ever make a mistake.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
I am the smartest man alive.
So we'll start with where we missed on a couple guys, and I gotta go. I'm gonna go to Buffalo because Buffalo gets the big win against Kansas City, and this year I was in on Keon Coleman because it's like, man, he's the number one wide receiver. He's highly drafted guy. They want to make him a weapon. And first week, he was awesome against Baltimore. And then he's only had one other big game. So I just have to confess that he has been a total letdown. And I have not dropped him. I have kept him on my roster all season long. And I keep waiting for him to break out. In weeks 6 through 9, he's averaging 4.6 points. It's pathetic. But the Bills win. Like the Bills' last couple weeks have looked good. And he's not a part of it. Now, on the flip side, I'm a Dalton Kincaid guy. And he's been good. So I've been pleased. He had a big performance against the Chiefs. So excited about that. And then also, I have to confess this almost every week because I've been so loyal to Brashard Smith. and very patient. And this was supposed to be the week. Isaiah Pacheco's out. What are we going to rely on Kareem Hunt the whole game? Yeah, they did. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still in the NFL? Well, I mean, what are we doing? Brashard Smith has been a part of this offense a little bit. We've seen glimpses, and he's been great. It's like, all right, Pacheco's out. Smith, you're our guy. This is your breakout game. Let's go. No. You sit over here. We're going to go back to the well one more time with Kareem Hunt and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. What is this, 2020? I mean, what year? I can't remember what year those guys.
2019, 2018. Yeah.
Gosh.
Right.
So anyway, those are my confessions.
The Chiefs are just a weird team, man. I mean, I think a couple of weeks ago, it seemed like they were really hitting their stride, and we're saying here we go again. Here we go again. Same old Kansas City Chiefs. And they haven't looked great the last couple of weeks. I mean, Patrick Mahomes had his lowest completion percentage. It seems like you can chalk that game against the Bills up to the Bills had a great game plan to contain Mahomes.
They did.
And kind of not let him do his normal kind of wheeling and shenanigans, like improvising that he does. They kept him in the pocket and kept him from improvising. But I just don't think Brashard Smith, I'm not sure that there is any Chiefs running back that you're really going to be able to rely on. You're just going to hope Kareem Hunt's going to be the goal line guy. You're hoping he gets a touchdown. But yeah, I'm shying away from all Chiefs skill players except for Rashee Rice. You just don't know week to week who's going to be the guy. It could be Hollywood Brown, it's like, it could be Tyquan Thornton. Like you just don't know. It'll be Travis Kelce some weeks. I mean, that's the thing with these guys that you're talking about. Mahomes is good enough to beat you in 20 different ways. Josh Allen, good enough to beat you in 20 different ways. So I guarantee you Keon Coleman will have a game sometime in the next 5 weeks where he goes off for 20 something points.
I sure hope so. He won't be in my lineup.
Your bench, right? Yeah, he'll be on your bench. And then you'll put him in your starting lineup and he'll score 5 again the next week. So he's one of those guys that is just miserable to own in fantasy football. Yeah.
Because, I mean, in my mind, he's the number one. Well, not in my mind. On the depth chart, he's the number one wide receiver. Like, that's his role on the team.
Yeah.
In a high-powered offense. It makes no sense.
I
can't wrap my mind around it. Because it's not like a boomer bust guy in on paper. Like, this shouldn't be a boomer bust guy. This should be a guy who is a part of your offense. And it's just not the case. They run the ball and they throw their tight ends.
Yeah. These rookie wide receivers, I feel like they are narrative bound more than just about any other position, where these guys, like, maybe just in a bad wide receiver rookie class last year, when you're talking Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette, like these athletic guys that we're excited about, great. And they look good. They look like they could be that, but they're not going to pan out, Whereas like a guy like Emeka Egbuka, everyone is just saying, like, no, and kind of people are just like, okay, he got drafted about where he should have been. Like, there was narrative around other wide receivers, and then you start to hear during like the summer, this guy is just a true professional, and it's just like these athletic specimens that didn't really do anything at like a big school in college. You just got to be careful about those guys at wide receiver, So, yeah, I mean, how are you feeling about Travion Henderson?
Man, it was such a great fantasy week because all of my backup running backs, their starter went out.
Mm-hmm.
I got the news that Ramondre Stevenson out, Isaiah Pacheco out, DeAndre Swift out. So I'm all excited. So I did put Henderson in the starting lineup, and then of course Manungai. So I'm feeling good about Henderson.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the knucklehead that came in and scored the touchdown,
Jennings, yeah.
Vulture,
mm-hmm.
Jennings the Vulture.
Right.
I don't even want to know his name. Get out of here. What are we doing? Again, the guy's coming out of the practice squad or off the bench or whatever. I mean, get him out of here. Right. Just feed the man. I kept saying that on Sunday. Just feed the man. So Henderson, nice day though. Double-digit fantasy points. So I was pleased.
I just want to circle back to something we were talking about earlier. I'll just say the guy that I've done the most accountability and confession about this season, started before the season, it's still going on, is Caleb Williams. And relatedly, DJ Moore versus Roma Odunze. Right? The past couple of weeks, DJ has surpassed Odunze. All of a sudden, he's the one who's being featured in the offense. He rushed for a touchdown and he threw a touchdown. And then there was a play where he was close to having a receiving touchdown. I think it was pass interference or something like that. So it's like he almost batted for the cycle or whatever. Man. I don't know. At that point, if a guy runs, catches, and passes a TD, do you let him come in and try to kick a field goal or something just to complete the whole collection in a single game? But DJ Moore looks very good now, and Rome Odunze seems to be an afterthought.
0 points.
Right.
I mean, that should have been shenanigans. That's unbelievable.
That's another one of those things that I'm convinced will change in the future. I just don't think week to week who's going to be featured. I don't think what Caleb Williams is going to do. And my big takeaway is, after that Cincinnati Bengals game, if I could trade Caleb Williams for an elite quarterback, right? Or if I could trade DJ Moore to upgrade at another position, I would absolutely do that, especially looking ahead to their schedule for the rest of the season, and especially in the fantasy playoffs. They have a pretty tough schedule. I think I like the trajectory that Caleb Williams seems to be on long term, developing as a quarterback over multiple seasons. I think that he will continue to be the Bears quarterback, and I feel good about what Ben Johnson is doing to develop him. So I think that there's at least reason to be optimistic about Caleb Williams, but I think this is going to be his best game of the season. And if you could capitalize on that, if you could capitalize on what DJ Moore did, even Monangai, if you're in a redraft league, like, I think he'll be serviceable the rest of the season, but he's not going to have 175 yards when DeAndre Swift comes back. So if somebody else is kind of hyped about that, any of those Bears guys,
trade him to me. I mean, send him my way, guys.
I know you're a big Monangai guy, and I do think that he's really good. To be clear, all the players that I just named, I think that they're good players, and I think that the Bears
peak value. You're right.
Peak value right now.
Yeah.
So I would capitalize on that if I could, especially as trade deadlines are approaching in the fantasy football season. I'd love to move some of these Bears coming off of that Bengals.
I do need to look at the schedule and figure out, okay, who's playing the Bengals twice? Because every divisional team, usually toward the end of the year, like I think the Panthers play the Saints twice coming up, which is nice too. How about our Panthers? Let's go. Let's go.
Man, I cannot believe that. And I cannot believe what Rico Dowdle is doing. Their defense looks really solid.
I got to confess. It is my confession. At church on Sunday, whoever I talked to about the Panthers game, I'm like, wow, yeah, we're not going to win today. There's no shot. It's the Packers.
I couldn't believe it.
It doesn't matter. It's almost like it doesn't matter. Today we're going to lose. It's fine. But let's not draw any conclusions. Well, now all of a sudden the Panthers win. Now what? It's playoffs are still in the conversation. It's very exciting. So my take on Bryce Young is still the same, but I'm impressed with the coaching staff, the defense, the run game. It's great. So very exciting. All right. So there you go. There's enough confession today. Actually, last thing, I got to give some love to Sam Darnold. And I think I made this confession all season last year because Sam Darnold was way better than expected with the Vikings last year. He's doing it again. Mm-hmm. In the offseason, when he got traded to the Seahawks, I did a video. This was like early in the offseason, like, forget Sam Darnold. You don't want him. The guy has it. Like he's playing well. He's the right guy for that system. He's got JSN. I mean, the guy's lucked out too. He goes from Justin Jefferson to JSN, but still, from a fantasy standpoint, Sam Darnold's been getting it done, and I avoided him and did not expect this to be the case. Yeah. So
I like good for him. I love that for him. Can I tell you a true story? I officiated a wedding this summer where Sam Darnold was a guest. And I didn't want to be that guy who went up and fangirled, So I didn't really approach him. I didn't talk to him, but I did in the reception. I just passed him for a moment. Said, "Hey man, how you liking Seattle?" And talked about Seattle a little bit. My sister lives out there, and then I was like, "Hey dude, JSN is really good," and he was like, "Yeah, he's good." And so I like to think that I am responsible for this 50% target share that JSN is getting this season.
You reminded him how good he is.
I don't think before I talked to Sam Darnold, he knew how good JSN was, but I told him, hey, he's a good receiver. You should consider throwing the ball to him half the time. And he's taken my advice on that. So
I'm glad you did that.
That story's only half true, by the way. Yeah,
that's right. I like it though. It's good. I have to confess, I did not draft JSN at all. And that is a huge regret. We'll do our regrets segment toward the end of the year. But man, that's a tough one.
He's so good.
He's been really top receiver. So very impressive. And then shout out to Brock Bowers bouncing back in a big way. It looks healthy. He's the guy. Now we mentioned Jacoby Myers trade earlier. Brock Bowers back in the mix. So to me, all right, top. We know who our top tight end is. Bowers, JSN, top receiver. Running back, CMC. Yeah. That's where we're at through week 9. Quarterback, though, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a grey question. It seems to change every week. Yeah.
I mean, Josh Allen, I guess, is still probably the guy.
They're these guys like Allen that have a floor because of that rushing ability. But every week, it seems like somebody is the new
Flacco.
MVP contender. Right. Yeah.
Caleb Williams this week.
Matt Stafford looks incredible the last couple of weeks. Yeah. I will say Geno played well this week because Bowers was back. Maybe that's sustainable. He hyper-targeted him. Brock Bowers looked healthy, and he's a great player. That said, Jacoby Myers is gone now. So that might be another situation that I'm trying to capitalize on, where I think at this point, all that an opposing defense has to do is shut down Brock Bowers because there's just nobody else that inspires confidence in that receiving core. Maybe, I don't know what you think about Ashton Genty for the rest of the season. I just think it was a good week for Geno. Good week for Bowers. I just don't know what you can expect from the Raiders going forward. Losing Jacoby Myers really hurts, and it's a signal that they know that they're not a very good team this season. So it's just going to be weird to see how that pans out for the rest of the year.
I know. I am nervous about Genty a little bit, but he's catching the ball out of the backfield. So if that can continue, that's huge. That to me is somewhat sustainable because we know they're going to be down in games most weeks. Yeah. So that's pretty good. All right, let's transition over to this week's breakout. And each week on the show, we love to take a fantasy concept related to the Bible, related to life. And so we love talking fantasy advice and just fantasy thoughts and all the shenanigans. But what Fantasy Football Fellowship really is all about is just pointing each other toward Jesus and continuing to learn about God's word. And so today, the fantasy concept is based around this idea that when we're having a good season, it is easy for us to say, I'm better than you. And as White Goodman, what is it? White Goodman, who from Dodgeball says, we're better than you and we know it. So there you go. So that's kind of the idea today, because last week on the show, we were talking about envy and jealousy. And oftentimes we will look at other teams like we talked about last week and go, man, I wish I had that guy. I want that player. Now, the flip side is what I want to talk about this week, because sometimes we have that team. We have the team with the great roster. We actually hit on our draft picks. We actually picked up the right guys on the waiver wire. And we find ourselves at the top of the standings. We find ourselves in the playoff mix. And now all of a sudden, we start saying, I'm better than you. And we know it. And so we start thinking, man, I'm pretty awesome. I'm pretty good at this fantasy football thing. Look at me. And now all of a sudden, what starts to happen? We take undue credit for the things going our way. We feel good about ourselves, and then pride and arrogance starts to enter in. And then we begin to look down on those other fantasy managers, believing that they are inferior to us and our fantasy dominance. Right? We're loving life. We're thinking, man, I'm on top of the standings, and I'm watching the other losers down on the bottom of the standings going, how could you drop that player? How could you start that guy? What are you thinking? You left that guy on the bench? What are you doing? Because now we've got all the answers. We're sitting good in the standings, and we know what we're doing. And so we start looking at everybody else and go, I would never do that. What were you thinking? And the truth is, even if we aren't in first place, as long as we aren't in last place, we can still have that attitude. I'm better than you, because we're still better than somebody, right? So that can still. So I'm not just speaking to the first place guy either, or girl. And so teams that are just having a good season, they can quickly discredit those below them on the standings. And think, man, that guy's struggling and he's having a tough time winning games. And so this is the mentality that can creep in as fantasy managers. And so, Trip, as somebody who I imagine finds themselves at the top of some standings, how does this resonate with you?
I get nervous whenever my team slides up there into that first place slot for exactly this reason, right? Because I've been in leagues with buddies who, when they get in first, you're going to know about it, because they're going to start bragging in the league texting thread or the league chat, and I think that's funny. That's all in good fun, but it always seems that that's the pride before the fall. And so yeah, when I got one of those good teams, I keep my mouth shut. Yeah, but you're right. I'm sitting there thinking it like, I'm sitting there looking at it like, man, look at this is the year, man. I'm so much better than these guys. Look at my roster. Look what I've put together. So you're right. It's a real tendency every season in fantasy.
And this may be a stretch, but I still believe it's true. We start to think when our fantasy season is going well and we start thinking, I'm better than you at fantasy. We then all of a sudden just start thinking, I'm better than you, period. Like, I'm so awesome at fantasy that I'm just better across the board. Now, all of a sudden, I'm a better husband. I'm a better father. I'm a better worker, because I'm dominating in fantasy. And this is what happens if we're not careful.
Yeah.
And so, we start to think we're better than everybody. And here's the deal. Instead of being annoying or a jerk and acting like we're better than everyone, because we might have a quick thought, or a couple weeks ago we talked about temptations. The temptation to start really letting that sink in. I'm better than you, and letting that now all of a sudden kind of drive our attitude, drive our behavior, how we interact with other guys. Well, eventually you become a jerk and you're annoying in the league. That's what happens. And so the alternative is to choose humility. And to your point, when you find yourself up there, it's like, oh, okay, here I am at the top of the standings. How am I going to respond to this? How am I going to actually act with this responsibility, with this opportunity? And are we actually humble enough to say, all right, I'm having a fortunate season. My team is healthy. A couple things have bounced my way. I've had some good matchups. I've played other opponents when they've had a down week and I escaped with a 100-point win. I scored 100 points and versus most leagues, you need 120, 130 to really win, but you won that week because of that. And so there's humility in that. There's understanding kind of the context and having the right perspective. So any thoughts on that as fantasy managers?
You're naming something so profound there. I mean, I think that is so funny, and it highlights something that is so true of the fallen human condition, which is that we have the ability to look at something as relatively kind of silly and small as a fantasy football league and to get puffed up about that. And then that pride, that puffed up sort of posture starts to creep into other areas of our life. I mean, that's an incredible thing to think about, man. Like that when the serpent came to Adam and Eve in the garden and he tempted them, he says, hey, you can be like God. When people got together and started building the Tower of Babel, right? They said, let's make a name for ourselves. Let's build a tower to the sky, right? It is this sin crept in and it made us do this in all sorts of ways. And what's so funny is when we look at our other friends, it's like you've got a buddy who makes more money than you. Right, you've got another buddy who's in better shape than you, right? But maybe you're the buddy who was the smartest in school, right? Or is the best time at a party. And so we choose the single sort of measure of success that we perceive ourselves to be the best at, and then we draw the line sort of a safe distance below where we are, right? And then we say, look how great I am, right? And my buddy over there who's making a lot of money, he's greedy, he's greedy. But I'm the life of the party and I'm super popular and everybody likes me and look how great that I am. And it can turn us into a puffed up, prideful person across all of the dimensions of our life. And we get on this treadmill. We get caught in this race that just over time just destroys us. It degrades our souls. Yeah. So you're naming something funny there with fantasy football, but it really is a little window into the pride that we're all susceptible to. And the only alternative is to actively cultivate humility, which is a very difficult thing to do, but it's an important thing that the Bible reiterates over and over again.
Absolutely. So we'll dive into some of that, but you're pointing to, this attitude of I'm better than you. And it does go off of fantasy football into our everyday life. And if we're not careful, all of a sudden we start thinking that we are better than others based on our bank account being better, our house being bigger, our kids being, smarter or better in some form or fashion. We think that our job is more prestigious than somebody else. And so the pride, the arrogance, it starts to creep in. And then in other areas of our life, we also become annoying and a jerk, right? I mean, that's what being prideful is. You start to act then just more like a jerk. You're harder to be around. And what's really happening is we take undue credit for things. We become self-absorbed, and then we view others as inferior to us because for whatever reason, we start telling ourselves how much, better we are than others. And as followers of Jesus, I hope that we can continue to be, convicted of this. And we've got to just continue to ground ourselves in a proper view of God, of ourselves, and remain rooted in humility and gratitude. Like that to me is the anchor that keeps us grounded, Jesus, but along that with humility and gratitude. And when we understand who Jesus is and what he's done for us, it should absolutely humble us and fill us with gratitude. And we become less focused on how great we are, or we just move past that. And it doesn't mean that we have to put ourselves down, but we just don't carry this attitude of I'm better than you. I'm better than you. And sometimes we don't even actively do that, but we have to catch ourselves and go, ooh, yeah, that was arrogant. The way that came across, or the way that I'm viewing this person, I'm looking down on this person. What am I doing here? So here's what Paul tells us in Philippians 2:3-4 in the Amplified Translation. He says, do nothing from selfish or empty conceit through factional motives or strife, but with an attitude of humility, being neither arrogant nor self-righteous. Regard others as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also for the interests of others. And so a lot here, I think the main focus for us today is humility. And so not being driven by, selfishness and empty conceit, but rather have this attitude of humility and not being arrogant nor self-righteous, which we're also going to talk about. And so any thoughts on that verse real quick?
I mean, I love that. Humility is a necessary ingredient for true love. To love other people takes a certain amount of humility. I wish I could remember the name of this, but there's this sort of story, this wonderful story about a person who, a journalist who got to meet two different presidents during two different administrations. And they said, the thing that I remember is when I met President A, I was really impressed by him. I felt like he was the most important person in the room. He really seemed like the most important and interesting person in the room. But when I met President B, the thing I remember coming away from that is that he made me feel like I was the most interesting person in the room.
Wow.
Right.
Cool.
So it's like,
Cool.
Jesus is saying here that when you're humble, it's not that you're self-deprecating, right? C.S. Lewis says it doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking about yourself less. You're freed to love other people, to be interested in them, to affirm and encourage them. I mean, I would just say some of my best friends, like I would say, this is true about you, Bryce, and this is true about your brother. I can tell that you guys were raised in a household where this was a point of emphasis, because when I spend time with you guys, I come away from those conversations thinking like, they really cared about me. They asked about me. I had trouble getting a word in to find out what was going on with them, to hear about what's going on in their life, because you guys are humble people that care about others. Don't let me puff you up by telling you that I think you're a humble guy, man. But yeah, when you spend some time with someone who is humble enough to love you and be interested in you. So that's what jumps out at me about that verse from Paul. He says, you're considering the interest of others more than your own. You're giving yourself away to love and encourage them. And that's a really special thing when you meet somebody like that.
Oh man. Well, no, I appreciate that. And yeah, as we parallel this to, fantasy football, and if we're so focused on, look at me on top of the standings and I'm feeling great. And so then if that becomes our life too, where, hey, let me tell you about how great I am. Let me tell you about all the cool things I'm doing, versus actually caring about other people. Well, yeah, then we're going to be consumed with ourselves, which then leads to pride and arrogance and being annoying and a jerk and hard to be around. That's really what it is.
And ultimately, I would say misery for you too, right? Loneliness and misery for you as well when pride really takes over your life. Yeah,
absolutely. And so it's one thing to be prideful about, whether it's money, a job, or some sort of worldly success. I think that's important to consider and talk about. But then there's another layer that we've got to get serious about too, as followers of Jesus, where this attitude of I'm better than you leads to self-righteousness, where we start to think that, I've got it all together. I'm this wonderful Christian man, and look how great I am. And everyone else is such a broken mess. And look at all I'm doing for the Lord. And man, we can just start to go down that path. Now, here's the deal. Of course, it's wonderful when we're experiencing growth in our faith. That's the point. We want to become more and more like Jesus. And so we want to be able to experience this fruit, and we want to live in obedience, and we want to live this life of serving the Lord and being about other people. But is it leading to us starting to think about how great we are? And now all of a sudden we start puffing ourselves up in things of the Lord and even in really good things. And so we got to catch ourselves on that. And so if that type of, those types of things they should be leading us to just continued humility and understanding of God's grace. But if it is leading more toward arrogance and pride, we got to time out and recalibrate and recognize that. And just humbly remember, what God has done for us and our need for a savior, and just understanding too that our salvation is not based on how great we are. It's based on what Jesus did and how great he is and how loving God is to send his only son for us. And so it's about his grace. It's not about my self-righteous effort and works and look how great I am and all that I'm doing to earn God's love or favor. No, Here's what Romans 3:22-24 tells us. We are made right with God by placing our faith in Jesus Christ. And this is true for everyone who believes, no matter who we are. For everyone has sinned. For everyone has sinned. We all fall short of God's glorious standard. Yet God, in his grace, freely makes us right in his sight. He did this through Christ Jesus when he freed us from the penalty for our sins. And so that is humbling. This is about what Jesus has done. And so it reminds us that we've all sinned. We all fall short. So none of us can do this on our own. All of us are in need of a savior. All of us are dependent on God's grace. And so for us to walk around thinking, I'm better than you, I'm better than you. No, what are we thinking? You got to be rooted in the truth of the reality and what God has done for us.
For me, it's a question of, do you spend most of your time in terms of your kind of spirituality looking up or looking down, right? Because when you're looking down, we like that feeling of like, oh, I'm doing better than these other people, and I'm not as bad as that guy, right? It's really, you can only really cultivate humility when you look up and see the chasm that exists between God's holiness and your self-righteousness. You are a severe sinner that is worthy of the wrath of a holy God. As we were preparing to talk about this topic, Bryce, you reminded me of this little parable that Jesus tells in Luke 18 that in some ways it's one of the best encapsulations of the gospel and the relationship between humility and the gospel that I think necessarily exists. It's the story of the Pharisee and the publican, or the Pharisee and the tax collector, that Jesus tells, where he says there are two men in the temple at worship, and the Pharisee is standing up front and he's standing off by himself. And you can sort of imagine, even as he's praying, he's looking down, right? He's saying, Lord, I thank you that I'm not like these sinners, that I'm not like that tax collector over there, that I follow all your laws, that I tithe regularly, that I give myself to the ministry. Look, I'm doing ministry, Lord. And he's filled with self-righteousness, and no one wants to stand near him in worship, right? And he's looking down, right? And then there's this tax collector in the back of the synagogue, in the back of worship, who really, for something has happened to him where he has gotten a clear view of himself and his sin. And it says that he's beating his chest and he's saying, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. Have mercy on me, a sinner. I know my sin. I know that I can't earn my way up to you. Please have mercy on me. And Jesus concludes the parable by saying, I tell you, it was the tax collector, the sinner, who went home justified, and not the Pharisee. It's a beautiful story because I think you can imagine that Pharisee, he got a clear view of his sin in comparison to God's holiness, but he's the one who went home justified, that is, declared righteous by God. He went home forgiven. He went home free. He knew who he was. He was humbled in the right way so that he was free to worship and love and pray and live in the right way. And it's such a beautiful story. So we don't want to see our sin clearly because that's a scary thing. But when you bring a clear understanding, a clear perception of your sin to Jesus, he always greets you with mercy. If you ask him for forgiveness, he says, I love to give more mercy. I love to give more forgiveness. And in that, we are set free. Humility is actually a freeing posture. It is a freeing condition, a freeing virtue, because we're free not to think about ourselves and, am I earning? Am I failing? No, I've been declared righteous in Jesus, and I get to walk home with him, and I'm free to do what he actually wants me to do instead of being a self-righteous Pharisee. So I love that story. It's one that you can come back to over and over again. And just remember that confessing your sin to God is always a means to the end of forgiveness and freedom. That's kind of one of the things that you have to understand to begin to cultivate humility, because we don't want to look at our sin unless we see a clear avenue for mercy, and that avenue is Jesus.
That's right. Yeah, the eyes go to Jesus. That's it. We recognize our sin, but then we keep our eyes on him and what he's done for us, and the freedom that we walk in. And the final part of that story, Jesus says, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And so it's this flip around, opposite type of situation than what we think. Because we live in this world where it's all about exalting ourselves.
Yeah.
And so, I just think to parallel this back to fantasy as we wrap things up, if we're sitting on top of on top of the standings and we're looking down at all these other fantasy managers making mistakes and going, oh, I can't believe you did this. But that's what we do in our self-righteousness. If we're looking at other people and their sin and thinking, oh, I'm better than you. At least I'm not doing that. I can't believe you did that. Look how great I am. And it's this attitude that just gets so self-centered and self-absorbed and self-righteous. And we get off track with that mentality. And so let's continue to be humbled. Let's continue to just remember our brokenness and need for a savior and the reality that we fall short. And yes, we want to continue to grow and become more like Jesus and grow in our spiritual understanding and grow in God's word and continue to serve him more and more. But it's always about him and it's about his glory, not our own. And so we have to, have people that keep us in check with that, because it's easy. Trust me, I'm full-time ministry. You're a pastor. We can get caught up in that very easily. We start looking at other people. I would never do that. I can't believe he did that. But we've got to stay rooted in just the understanding that, man, without God, I'm nothing. Like, I've got no strength on my own. I've got limited understanding. Gosh, I need him. Like my most common prayer is, I need you. 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 I pray it regularly and often because that's what we need. And so let's recognize our great need for God's grace and mercy. Let's choose humility. And no matter what kind of season we're in, because we might be in some great seasons, things are going well, and maybe things at work are going well, or we're really growing spiritually, our marriage is thriving. Our heart posture can always be humble, even when things are really going well. And instead of I'm better than you, it's I'm not better than anyone. I'm not better than anyone. That's not what it's about. God's better than me. He's who I serve. He's who I love. All the praise and honor goes to him. And kind of echo what Paul says too, 1 Corinthians 15:10. But by the grace of God, I am what I am. And so we're all resting in God's grace, right? And so that's hopefully the message today. And so let's choose humility. So there you go. But if you're first place in your fantasy league, enjoy it. I'm not saying you can't enjoy it. Just let's do it the right way. Yeah. Because we also know how quickly you tumble down the standings as well. So you start getting prideful, and then you watch your favorite wide receiver walk off with a hamstring injury. So be careful about that too.
Yeah, look, if you win your league this season, hey, enjoy that. I would say take a couple of minutes to just talk a little smack. Say, I beat you fools this year. But then immediately follow that with, man, I love doing this with you guys.
That's right.
Like, I love being in this league with you guys. Right. Like, it's so fun to play together. Can't wait I'm already looking forward to next season. Have fun. Don't be bragging in the middle of the season if you're first in the rankings, because you don't know where you're going to end up. But if you win, go ahead and enjoy that. You can just brag just a little bit, but make sure you express gratitude to your league for how fun it is to play with them.
Absolutely. No, that's good. Good stuff. So there you go. That's this week's breakout. I'm better than you, or rather, I'm not better than you. So there you go. All right, let's. We're running out of time here today, so we'll have to kind of jump through a couple segments here. But how about we let's do a little Peace or Panic. We'll wrap up the show with some Peace or Panic today. And I guess before we do that, just real quickly, any waiver wire guys that you're targeting specifically this week? Who's the top of your list?
I mean, you name some of these guys, like Adonai Mitchell, possible that he's on waivers. I think he gets a little bump in value. Some of these guys who maybe are still there's nobody who's jumping off the page at me. I would just say, pay attention to some of the secondary implications of these trades that have happened, and just check your waivers. You don't know in the middle of the season if somebody who's going to have value the second half of the season is out there. So obviously, if a guy like Monangai is there, somebody who just went off, one of these rookies who's starting to turn things around a little bit or show promise for the first time, you just got to check for those guys. Mid-season is the time when that really matters the most, because people have frustration dropped good players. They've given up on rookies that are going to be valuable in the second half of the season. So it's more just a matter of, really assessing what your team needs. And I would say, especially if you're in a fab league, right, you can't take that money with you. And it really doesn't really matter how much fab that you have left in like week 15. This is the time to spend it. So just dig in there a little bit to your waivers and see who's there.
Huge bummer. Tucker Kraft goes down. I think Luke Musgrave is worth a look, especially if you're a Kraft owner. I think absolutely Luke Musgrave can be a good replacement. And I tend to think that he's worth a flyer. And I'll in leagues that I need a solid tight end, I think, I'll explore him for sure. We just don't know because we haven't seen enough of him, and the fact that Kraft kind of took his job. But again, Musgrave was drafted ahead of Kraft in the NFL draft. So there is some talent there. So he's somebody to keep an eye out. The Cleveland Browns stink, but they are making a change to the play caller. So Stefanski has stepped down as the play caller. does that open things up for Cleveland players? And could Cedric Tillman come back from injury and be a little bit better? Remember this time last year, he really emerged.
Starting to emerge.
Could that happen again? Dylan Sampson, could he come in, play for Quinshon Judkins if he gets banged up, or could Sampson just be more a part of the offense? So those are a couple names that I'm exploring. I still like Blake Corum. He was getting some good run against the Saints. Didn't put up huge numbers, but if you watched that game, you saw him out there. He started the second half. I was like, where's Kyron Williams? I don't think I had the sound on. I was playing Candyland or something. What was I playing? I was playing Guess Who. I was playing, it was Candyland. We got the Disney Candyland. It's a whole different game. It's like the princesses. Yeah. So I'm down with the princesses.
We play a lot of Candyland at the Smith household.
With the games on behind me. But Blake Corum's definitely somebody I still like. He's probably rostered in a lot of leagues. But anyway, so there you go. There's a couple waiver wire thoughts. And of course, Colson Loveland. But I told you that last week. So hopefully you listened to me last week. But let's do a little peace or panic. And we'll wrap up the show with that today. But glad to have everybody a part of the show today. And if I can find this, here we go.
Well, I guess deep down I'm feeling a little confused.
It's just a lot to process, and that's what I'm doing.
We can't have anyone freak out there, okay? We gotta keep our composure. We've got too far. There's too much to lose. We gotta keep our composure.
Well, don't worry. I'm not gonna do what you all think I'm gonna do, which is flip out.
Flip out just yet, or maybe we do. So peace or panic. Let's go to Detroit. So they're coming off a weird game to lose to the Vikings. JJ McCarthy comes back and looks decent, but let's not get carried away. But the player I'm most concerned about or thinking about is David Montgomery. So week 6 through 9, he's only been averaging 8.3 points per game. Now, he did have 11 in week 9. Gibbs was in single digits. He had a very bad game. Peace or panic, David Montgomery and or Jahmyr Gibbs?
No panic for Jahmyr Gibbs. No panic for Jahmyr Gibbs. Just an off game. He can always break off a 60-yard run for a touchdown that just wins you your week. I would say I think what we're beginning to see is the beginning of the end of David Montgomery's career. We're seeing, I think, a little bit of a decline. Remember, he finished last season with a fairly significant injury, so he was coming back from injury this year. But what actually happens with David Montgomery is if the Lions are losing or they're in a close game, they feature Gibbs. If they're winning and they want to sort of run some clock, they feature Montgomery more. And I think they're going to be winning more games than they're losing for the rest of the season. So in general, I think he's a guy that you can start and expect 10 to 14 points on most weeks if the Lions are winning, so they
RB3, he's probably low end 2, maybe.
Yeah,
still.
I think probably a high end RB3 is the right number for him. Yeah.
You're just not getting the big, because sometimes he's had some RB1 weeks and it's like, oh wow, true 1-2 punch.
He's always been touchdown dependent though. I mean, there were so many games last season where he scored 2 touchdowns. I mean, he had multiple multi-touchdown games, and he will still do that this year if the Lions are winning and running the clock and doing kind of ground and pound stuff. But he has been fully supplanted by Gibbs as the guy that they want to feature. And so not really panic there. You just got to know what your expectations are with him.
All right. This is somebody that I've got in a few leagues. Courtland Sutton. From week 6 through 9, he's been averaging 10 points. Wide receiver, 45. Right around there. And I saw this stat today. Troy Franklin, 64 targets compared to Courtland Sutton's 62 targets this season. And this past week, I was stubborn. I went against the fantasy advice of other people, and I still started Courtland Sutton because there's some question marks about his matchup this week. And he did get in the end zone. So I was like, see, he can still do it. But that was his only catch. He did nothing else. It was so thankfully got in the end zone, saved the day. But I'd say there's some panic with Sutton because Knicks is playing well. The Broncos are winning, and he's not as involved. Well, he plays great in the fourth quarter,
right?
But he's not as involved just in the offense like he was last year. Sutton was the go-to guy.
That's what I would say. CJ Stroud went out early in that game, and Davis Mills is the quarterback. And the Texans still, they had to work really hard to lose that game. I mean, they had to make some stupid decisions in the fourth quarter to lose that game. And that seems to be happening over and over again with these games that the Broncos win. So I think what's actually going on with Sutton there, I still think he's the best receiver on that team. He's getting older, and they do have these pretty dynamic young receivers. But it's really just like, you don't know what Bo Nix is going to do. And he doesn't seem to do much of anything until the fourth quarter. And so it makes sense to me if they're trying to come back, they're going to feature some of these like long shot guys like what Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims are, more than their kind of possession receiver, which I think is what Cortland Sutton is, so I am panicking, but it's more the Broncos defense is really, really good. They're always going to keep them in games. And it seems like Bo Nix just goofs around until the fourth quarter. And
it's remarkable.
I just don't know what to believe. And Sutton will have great games for the rest of the season, but I don't know what to think about this Broncos offense.
I feel like Matthew Stafford was that way in Detroit. Like, not that they won a lot of games, but he was always better in the fourth quarter.
I think
he
Matthew
was great down the stretch.
He was, because they were always coming from behind. So he was a garbage
behind.
time master. Yeah. Matthew Stafford is a much better quarterback, and I would say has always been a much better quarterback than what I think Bo Nix is right now. That's a generous comparison by you. I heard somebody compare him this week to a better Tim Tebow. Right now, he's a much better passer than Tim Tebow, but he's this guy. He just goofs around, and then he's like the cardiac pack. Like he comes back at the last minute. They have so many of these games where they win in the fourth quarter, usually because the other team does something fluky and foolish. So I just don't know what to think about their offense. And I would love to not have Sutton on my team in a position where I need to depend on him, because week to week I just don't know what he's going to be.
We saw a Panthers team, the Cardiac Cats. Start talking about Cardiac Cats. We saw Jake Delhomme take us all the way to the Super Bowl. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
The Broncos might be bound for a deep playoff run, or they might not be a very good team at all. I have no idea what to believe about them, and so that Sutton, among others, is affected by that.
We were. Well, I know I was. I think you were too, on the RJ Harvey bandwagon, and not as much in the rushing game, but he was very involved in the passing game. Yeah. And so he had a nice game on Sunday. All right, last piece or panic question. DK Metcalf. 2.6 points in week 9 in a win against the Colts. I still have peace, but he hasn't gotten to the level that I hoped he would this year. He's been closer to sort of where he was drafted at. Like, I still think he got pretty good value, but I was hoping to get really good value, that he'd be closer to a wide receiver 1, a high end wide receiver 2, and he's low end 2, wide receiver 3 kind of guy. I drafted him as a wide receiver 3, so I'm getting enough out of him overall. But recently, a little bit of a letdown, and he does this. This has been his career, right. So I don't think we should be too surprised. I just thought maybe the Steelers would depend on him a little bit more, but they love Freiermuth and all these tight ends, and Jalen Warren's been playing a little better too.
And Rodgers has been good this season.
Not great.
But as he gets more wear and tear on his body from the season, and I think especially as the weather gets colder, like it's going to be so boom or bust for DK Metcalf. And I think the ceiling on the booms is capped. Like, I don't think that he's going to be this 30-point wide receiver. His boom weeks are going to look like 17 points. And the floor for his bust weeks is what we saw this week, 2 points, 0 points, So again, I would say moderate panic around DK, in that I thought it was going to be better for this, and just kind of didn't really think about what the Rodgers experience would be like over the course of a whole season. He's been solid to start this season. I think there's reason to believe that the second half will be tougher for them than the first half has been. So yeah, I'm just a little bit worried about DK Metcalf. Yeah.
How many times do they get to play the Bengals? We need to check on that.
I mean, yeah, we need to look at some of the strength of schedule stuff now that we're in the second half of the season. But yeah, everybody that we've named here today is just that they're a victim of unpredictable offenses. And that's not what you want to be relying on when you're making your push for the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, consistency. I tell you what team I really like, the Rams. I mean, what Stafford's doing. I mean,
yeah,
this is I think one of my first times ever having Devontae Adams on a team. Has been a wonderful experience. Mm-hmm. I am a Devontae Adams fan.
Right.
It's great.
Just solid. Consistency is what you want. Great. The Rams, I mean, it's just great. Like, yeah, these.
Now Puka's banged up again. I feel like he's injured every other day, but
they throw the ball
when he's out there, he's
1,000 times. He's just getting that's what I'm worried about for Bowers too, is just these guys who get this high volume. Can they just hold up but you love it when it's going on, so you're happy if you're a Puka owner right now.
Man. All right. Well, good show. I've got to wrap this show up. I'm going to the Duke Texas game here in Charlotte tonight.
Fun, man. I hope you have fun.
Should be good. So I appreciate it. He's Trip Smith. Thanks so much for listening and watching today, and hope you had a great or you will have a great Fantasy Football Fellowship League meeting. For Trip, I'm Bryce. I'm a fantasy manager who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans who follow Jesus together. Have a great rest of your day, and let's remember, I'm not better than you. Let's get rid of that attitude in our lives, and just remember, man, who really is better than us? And let's continue to trust Jesus and rely on his grace and mercy. Be grateful for it. Man, it's incredible. Have a great one. Thanks so much for listening. It's the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast.